Katie in New Mexico, you are on the line with Eric and Jimmy. I have to keep remembering what my name is. Go ahead, Katie.
Hello, can I talk?
Yes, you
Am I
may.
muted? Can I talk?
No, you're here.
Hi, Katie.
Sorry, no, I'm new to the show. I just seemed like everyone says that, so I felt like I had to say it. So I'm recently getting into figuring out if like I actually believe in God and all that.
Okay.
And it's a whole thing. I think I still do. I don't know, I like praying. And I wasn't raised religious, but I did watch Ancient Aliens a lot when I was a kid with my dad.
My condolences.
And
Aliens.
and I never took it super seriously, but honestly, there were some parts where I'd be like, if it wasn't God, it had to be an alien. And for the longest time, when it came to human evolution, I was like, there's no way I'm an animal. I'm not a monkey. I'm not an ape. How dare you? How dare you atheists say that? And part of me still feels that way. And I found a Forrest Valkai's channel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I found this channel.
Cool.
And I gotta admit, after watching some of his stuff, and also from Gut Sick Gibbon, a lot of her videos, and it's, I don't know, it kind of makes sense that people are apes and all that, but like, how does an ape discover, like, how does a critter go from not using fire, like being afraid of fire, and then wanting to use fire without there being some sort of intervention? Like, I don't know. No other critter uses
Are you
fire.
asking?
So like,
Are you asking how creatures discovered the creation of fire, going from non-fire to fire, or how to use it effectively once it's been created? Or both?
I mean, I guess, I don't know. I'm kind of new to biology. Well, not biology in general, but like biology with humans and like ancient humans. So like, I don't really, like, what's the difference between that?
Well, it depends on what you mean by ancient humans. That, as far as humans and ancient humans, go on.
My question would be, Katie, can you think of anything that you used to not know, but then you learned by just trial and error?
I mean, yeah.
So what's more plausible? Is a supernatural being interceded and gave us fire, or our ancestors just learned how to harness it through trial and error?
But I don't see, because it's like, especially like, how does like a hairy ape do that? Like I feel like if we did experiments with chimps, we'd catch them on fire and then be like, we should not do this.
Wait, Katie, no.
That's the error part of trial and error.
Chimps can be taught to use fire right now. Katie,
you can teach chimps to use tools and such.
I think you have almost like a problem of reverse anthropomorphizing, where it's sort of this idea of anybody that isn't like a modern day Homo sapien must have just been mindlessly walking around, sometimes putting shit in their mouths and all sorts of stuff like that. And that's not at all true. There are lots of species of things that have developed using tools, have developed, like, not even just in the ape line. We're talking about like ravens and other corvids can do like some pretty crazy shit and can be trained to do pretty crazy shit. And in the wild, instead of it being necessarily training that is another species training them, it's literally just a repetition of a pattern. Hey, this successfully led to this. I'm going to try this again and see if it happens again. You have out in the oceans, you have types of whales that are the same species as whales in other part of the world, but because this pod or this lineage of them have developed a very effective hunting mechanism, they're the only ones that do that method of hunting, even though, again, their exact species exists other places, and all they have to do is socialize them to them and they pass it along. So literally, like, learning and teaching happens in other species, but fire only starts to be showed to be controlled by different ape species like 1 to 2 million years ago, I think it is. And we're talking about fire existed before. They did see interactions with, you know, whether it was lightning catching things on fire. By the way, there are also non-thinking species that rely on fire. There are entire forests of trees that rely on forest fires to tell them basically to release their seeds and burn up the bottom brush and make it so that there's places for them to. So like a development of fire socially or evolutionarily isn't wild. It's a matter of it was heat and energy, right? Those are like two super pivotal things that you have to get from somewhere. And so, yes, a lot of times things would have died if they, but like the very first interaction with fire, of learning that fire is something we can use for our benefits, would have just been, okay, if I get this close to the fire, I die. So if I just stay a little further away, I don't die. Or if I touch the fire, and so you're talking about the building blocks of just old humans that figured out don't touch things that are on fire was the first thing they would have learned, or something like that. And then that building and developing, when the new foundation is they already understand and are passing along, don't touch things on fire. I don't know why you would take a very specific social experience. Like electricity is much more recent and seems much crazier, and yet we figured out electricity.
I think what Katie's getting at is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Katie. I think the discovery and harnessing of fire was just such a epic leap forward for the development of our species. That it's kind of one of those things. It's like it was world altering, life changing. And I agree, it was a huge event. But I'm not an anthropologist, but you can imagine how our ape ancestors are observing the world around them, doing their best to survive. As Jimmy pointed out, which was the thing I was going to get to, is that we have natural means for fire to just come about. We have lightning strikes, we have volcanoes, we have heat, like extreme heat, we have friction lighting things on fire. And our ancestors observed these things, and they started doing experiments. Hey, if I grab this branch, it's on fire. I can light other things on fire with it. Hey, it's warm. And if I keep just the right distance from it, it keeps me warm. And if I get too close, ouch, that's hot. Or if I get too close, ouch, I die. And that's kind of where natural selection comes in. Our ancestors that effectively experimented and harnessed it survived. And the ones that screwed up died. And you're just left over with those that naturally know how to harness it correctly. There's nothing.
I do want to point out that's a good metaphor, but that's not humans. You wouldn't call natural selection how we developed our fire. Yeah. It's not. Literally
I would say natural. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not an evolutionary biologist. So maybe I'm completely off base here, but it stands to reason that those who effectively harnessed it survived, and the ones that didn't died, and leaving behind more and more people or of our ancestors that could effectively harness it. There's nothing supernatural about this. There's nothing spectacular about this. It's the stuff that we do all the time when it comes to trial and error and learning new skills. And all it takes is for a few of our ancestors to effectively learn how to do this, kind of, become relative masters at it compared to everyone else, and then they start teaching their tribe, and they start teaching other tribes, and the knowledge just starts to spread. No God required, as far as I can tell, unless you can point at something that say, wow, this requires a supernatural explanation, while also eliminating literally all other natural explanations for it.
Yeah. My contention is we've evolved trial and error genes. We haven't evolved fire harnessing genes. It would have been separate. Yeah. It would have been a separate sort of thing.
I'm sure Erica Gutsy Gibbons probably screaming at her screen right now at me, but yeah, I mean, you're saying I don't see a way for this to be the case without a God, which I could get into. That's kind of like an argument from incredulity, but let's not worry about that. Yeah, or aliens.
Yeah, I keep hearing
I could go into
on the show talk about a God of the gaps thing, and like I was like,
do you understand what that is?
I think to myself, I'm like, this is so extraordinary. It has to be something, but I'm like, is it a gap God? Like.
Do you know what the argument?
Go ahead, Jay.
Do you know what the phrase "argument from incredulity" means?
No. To be honest, I don't know what incredulity means.
So this one is the one that probably more applies to what we're. I mean, God of the gaps and argument from incredulity are basically hand in hand, but I think it's one that you need to hear for sure. So the argument from incredulity is essentially this must be correct because I can't imagine something else, and the thing you have to learn and develop as a skeptic is lots of things may exist in a state you are incapable of imagining and that you are incapable of conceiving. That's going to be true of, I do not have a good concept of quantum physics. I can restate a lot of phrases from quantum physics, and there are specific quantum physics questions a person can ask that I can recite the answer to and still tell you I don't internally understand it. But my inability to internally understand that, or the concept of just conceptually, we have very good reasons to believe that time began at the Big Bang, which means that before the Big Bang doesn't actually make sense, because before is saying some sort of time, right? There is no time, so there can't be before a Big Bang. And my brain can't actually conceptualize how that would work. It is intuitive.
Quantum stuff, I feel like I need to do mushrooms to understand, honestly.
I don't think they're doing a lot of. I've met a quantum physicist, and they could use some mushrooms, frankly. But I do not naturally intuit the concept of time, of no time, of there not being a before time, a before the Big Bang. And yet, we have good reasons to accept that that would be true. So, argument from incredulity would be, if you're sitting there going like, "This seems so wild, I can't imagine something more," you're probably doing one of two things. One, maybe you actually can't imagine what the solution is. Or two, maybe you could if you tried, but it feels simpler to put a one-word phrase as the answer. It feels simpler to say God. It feels simpler to say aliens than to explain the way something like a mass behavior. Which again, I mean, the two of you think that fire was a much bigger jump forward than I actually, like as far as things that have been huge human jump forwards, the invention of writing and electricity, I would argue, were both way bigger moments. But certainly fire is foundational, sure. But
grilled chicken, that was an epic lead forward for me.
Sure. We still almost went extinct several times before after fire was invented, so we weren't great until
I think it was Gutsick Gibbons' video that I saw. It was something like apes didn't spread all across the world until like fire was discovered, and that was one of those moments I was like, oh fuck, we're the apes.
Fire was important for taking heat to not hot places and surviving winters, no doubt. And I'm not saying it's not large. I just to me, as far as like taking the size of a problem and going, this would have been, to me, it makes sense that Homo sapiens, and I believe Homo erectus also used fire. I think Homo habilis also used fire. And I think our cousins, Homo Neanderthal also used fire.
Yeah, that was the other thing. I was like, did we learn it on our own, or did Homo erectus be like, hey, let me teach you, young one?
Well, there isn't a difference, because those are our ancestors. So you might say like, maybe if there were totally unattached species, but Homo erectus are our ancestors. So if they learned it, we learned it as their offspring. Maybe if Homo erectus figured it out and then they came across a group of Homo Neanderthal and taught them, you could say, but all those are just sort of fun questions. To me, the development of the brain, which is something that the whole Homo lineage has clearly evolutionary prioritized, made the emergence of something like fire, and the fact that we had brains that, though they didn't have much past understanding, would be looking for solutions to the biggest problems in the world. And the biggest problems in the world would be dying of different things. And that fire could stop you from dying from not just exposure, but also, boiling water, though they didn't necessarily figure out that was why. Boiling water could stop you from dying from what are they called? Bacteria and stuff. Parasites. That was the word I was looking for. That to me is like, Katie, I guess just keep learning evolution, because to me it almost seems inevitable. I don't see electricity as necessarily inevitable. It wouldn't surprise me if there are intelligent species across the universe that had emerged with language and developed things that never got around to electricity or took much longer. And the reason why I bring up electricity is we actually do know how but we know how they came up with electricity, right? We know how they came up with nuclear. And so these recent examples.
I think that's the thing with the fire too. It's like, it's so far back. I'm like,
right. And so
what y'all said about the small steps at a time, like
what I'm trying to express to you is that
I thought about it that way.
We've had bigger developments, bigger leaps forwards, things that, again, humans almost went extinct after fire several times. But you know what they haven't almost gone extinct after? Basically written word. That's like the main one. Oh, we might be buffering right now. I see my little thing flashing. Why is this only happening on my computer?
That's happening on mine too. I see it in YouTube chat here.
Oh, okay. No, I meant only from my. I got to figure out what's going on with this.
Everyone super chat Jimmy so he can buy a better router.
We are doing some tech stuff. Go to linemerch.com and buy some merch and help us do some tech upgrades. Okay. So the point before we were hitting the buffering thing that I was just trying to make is there are larger problems we've seen solved recently, and it did not require any intervention. Humans to fire seems like inevitability. Humans to nuclear capabilities does not seem like an inevitability when you talk about the development of brain and problem solving and stuff, though that is still what did it. And so why it is when there are things recently that are these massive undertakings, or now as we're starting to take massive undertakings of quantum computing and trying to map out the brain and all of these things that have never come close to happening before. Why, when it's more recent, is it easy to accept? But when it's far back and it's something like fire or any of the many things that a Joe Rogan guest would be on the podcast to pretend they have proof of. Why is that those things are the ones that we go, yeah, it couldn't have just been humans, even though we've seen humans do crazy stuff. It had to be more.
I think it's because it's recently, and like this is the thing I'm trying to like break down in my own brain, because it's like I know it's easy to think of stuff from just your own perspective, and like I've had to break down a lot in my life with shit. And like also, side tangent, just wanted to say thank you for that transatlantic show and the chewed gum show, because when I say I'm breaking down stuff in my head, I mean like transphobia and misogyny. And now I'm trying to do the same stuff with like just all the spirituality stuff, because it's like I like it, but
those shows are great.
I don't want to believe stuff that isn't real. I saw a thing
reverse anthropomorphization, like I was talking about earlier.
What was the what?
What I said earlier, the things that people tend to go, if you're not a Homo sapien, you're not a modern Homo sapien, you must have just been wandering around putting shit in your mouth all the time.
Yeah.
It's the reverse anthropomorphizing.
I laughed when you said that, because it's like I legit think that. Like they were like going crazy. But I've also like started to try and watch videos about like people who interact with chimps and orangutans. And I learned recently that gorilla, the word, like the ancient meaning of the word is like hairy person. And like orangutan, the ancient word, means like forest person. And it's like, I don't know, I'm trying to not see them as not people. And it's like, I don't know. I think what you said helps, because it's like I can see how one step at a time they could do it. Like they could be afraid of it and then not be afraid of it. But it just, it's weird.
There's a really good subreddit called Like Us, and it's all about how animals and humans behave very similarly. And the great ape, Jimmy's frozen, so I guess I'm on the show now.
I'm not frozen, am I?
Yeah, you were for a moment. Anyway, or you were really standing really still.
I was just being very still.
There are some great documentary video of the great apes, chimpanzees, orangutans, gorillas in their natural environments, and some of the ways they behave. It is eerily similar to us. And once you start kind of absorbing that type of like documentary material, it starts softening the idea of, yeah, maybe we are related because we see such similarities in between us. But anyway, just to kind of put the rest of my final thoughts on that, you mentioned a few moments ago, Katie, that you're endeavoring to deconstruct your previous beliefs. You're attempting to reduce the number of false beliefs that you currently are attached to. I think that's all great. That's an excellent way to approach these types of questions, to approach figuring out life. It's more than what a lot of people do, because a lot of people will go into these struggles and these challenges of figuring things out, and they'll drag in their previous notions and their previous conclusions instead of putting those aside and saying, okay, what if these are false? Let me start examining things. And my final thing there is kind of looping all the way back around to what we were talking about, the argument of incredulity and the God of the Gaps thing. It can be very easy to say, I don't have a good explanation or a good idea, or I can't imagine how this can be. Therefore, this arbitrary things the explanation, God, aliens, the unicorns from the sixth dimension. Like you can take any unknown and jam an explanation in there. The problem is though, that will prevent you in some way or another from honestly seeking the real truth, because you'll kind of clap your hands together and go, okay, done, moving on, and not come back and think about it. It'll prevent you from coming to more accurate conclusions.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no worries. I'm bloviating a little bit,
and he's used to it.
But yeah, I'm used to it too. I'm here with this guy. But anyway, ultimately, like it's okay if you have a question you have an answer to, you can study it and research it and try to seek the answer. And if you spend your entire life and you can't come to a solid conclusion, that's okay too. You made the attempt, but at no point are you ever justified to go, well, I'm done looking because I've exhausted everything I could think of. I have no more knowledge or imagination to rely on. Therefore, this is the explanation. You will never have that justification. So try to keep that in mind, and just last thing too, all your conclusions, hold them at certain levels of confidence. You know, like my story about how apes harness fire, I've got kind of mid confidence in that. It's not, I'm not married to it. I can easily let go of it if an anthropologist came in here and said, no, Eric, you're totally wrong. Here's what the data says. Hold everything at levels of confidence, and say, okay, I think this might be the explanation. Keep it naturalistic. Keep it within the realm of reality that we understand. And if you aren't too confident in it, don't be so confident in it. And just stay open.
No, that makes sense. And that's kind of why I called, because I was like, I didn't know if y'all were biologists or not. Like,
no, I program computers. I'm boring.
And Forrest is. You're what now? I'm sorry.
I'm a computer programmer. I'm a boring, just run-of-the-mill developer. But no, what you should do is what you should do is you should wait for Skep Talk with Gutsick Gibbon and Forrest Valkai, because those episodes run long because they start feeding into each other and they start talking about biology. You should call in then and talk to them, and they'll give you a much more accurate, far less dumb explanation than I gave. You should try talking to them.
Neither of them are anthropologists either, but they will have some fire knowledge, and because Eric's presuming that I don't have that one, and that's fine. Eric's always thought I was just a stupid man with nothing good to, and he's not totally wrong, but I do know some things. Katie, also, I think the problem I have too with I can't imagine it without God or aliens, therefore God or aliens makes sense. It only makes sense if it's just that one word, because as soon as you say to me, aliens had to do it, I'm going to want an explanation of aliens. And the aliens are going to also have
called and was like, you need to have evidence. And I was like, well, shit, I'm kind of just calling to ask questions. I was like,
So aliens, whatever aliens it would be, wouldn't there be a point in their history where they would have needed to harness fire?
Shit. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did the aliens figure it out?
To think, like, what if, and then like I saw these crazy like evolutionary conspiracy threads where people are like, oh, the Trudons were alive and became sentient, and then after the extinction event, their ghosts are the ones who guide us.
Ancient aliens presented that the Mormon story is true, but Joseph Smith didn't know he was talking to aliens. So I think you need to really put all of that shit out of your mind, because that is dumb stuff. Basically,
it sounds fun.
An answer isn't less complex because it's short. God is not and this is a mistake that people make all the time. It feels not complicated if you only let it live in isolation. If you go, I can't think of an answer for this, but the word God, that I'll throw in there, because now explain the God. Where did God get fire from? Who is God? Where did he evolve from something? Did he not? How did something with the knowledge of everything? Why would he have taken so long to give fire? Why did he give a shit about Homo erectus? Why did he give a shit about Homo habilis? Why did he give a shit about any of that line? Why did he only give fire to them? Which isn't technically true. Again, there are lots of plants that rely on fire. And then there are other things that are crazy, like animals that live on thermal vents, which is, somewhat similar to the whole idea. It's it only feels simpler because it can be such a quick response. But the actual response, the questions, all the questions you have about fire, the number of questions you can come up with that you then become incredulous about, pale in comparison to the number of questions that there must be about God or the aliens that would have done it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that kind of makes sense. I mean, I just want to know what the cause is, and
Me too.
when things don't feel right, it's hard to not go against that. But
what does it mean to not
what you
feel
said
right?
there kind of felt right. So it's like it's hard to separate the emotion from the logic. But
And it's hard. It's hard not to know. It's hard not to know, and that's also part of our evolutionary background. I'm going to get in more trouble here. We have a drive to understand our environment around us and know what's going on. Yeah, we absolutely do. Because, okay. And because understanding of our environment, accurate understanding of reality helps us survive. So we have that drive to know, hey, what's that rustle in the bush? Or hey, what is causing that sun to come up over the horizon? Or why does fire kill my friend when he walks into it? Like we have a need to know these things because it promotes our survival. So, and with all of our ancestors being in that mindset, of course, naturally we are very uncomfortable with not knowing because it's that unsettling, like, I need to know. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. It drives us to learn more about the world around us, but also it tends to also drive us to adopt conclusions we have no founding for.
Yeah, I don't know. I wish they wrote stuff down. Like, I get that they didn't because, like, they couldn't. But yeah, it was just like, I want to know. But I don't know. I think what y'all told me was pretty good.
Cool.
I'll try to call when the scientists are here. But I don't know. For non-scientists, I think. Like, I didn't even know that shit about trees. Like, trees could do that with fires. Like, they don't even have brains. Like, right. So that's
yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't a scientist. Sorry, that Eric Refield. I'm just here a big dum. Yeah,
sorry, just outed Jimmy. Sorry.
But on the real note, I thank you for this show. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Y'all are doing good work, and like especially, I know they don't make you the big bucks probably because they don't seem to get as many views. But I really appreciate the Transatlantic show and the Chewed Gum show. And also because, like, not to throw too much shade at atheists, but, like, I have met a lot of atheists who are, like, totally willing to be, like, deconstruct spirituality and all that, but then be like, oh, yeah, patriarchy is real. Fucking gender binary is real.
You don't have to apologize for... I thought you were going to say something else. I thought you were going a totally different direction. What you're describing is why we do the show. Literally, it was that there is this not only this underserved community, but because the other communities are so massively dominant and present in the whatever you would call it, the atheist world. Yeah, it's like a huge fucking problem. It's why we did it. I also have met many people who are like, oh, I've deconstructed religion, but as a man, I've come up with reasons why all the patriarchy stuff is still valid. That was the whole point.
It's like, the fuck? Like, and I've honestly, a lot of atheist IRL I've met have been like that. So it didn't give me a good impression. But when I found, what's his name? Forrest Alkai's show, and then got Sick Gibbon, and then saw that they're on here, I was like, you know what? Honestly, maybe I should be atheist because they seem to be on the better side of things when it comes to a lot. I don't see much of my
but I will tell you this:
doing shit when it comes to.
This is sort of my last thought for you.
People.
Don't be atheist because you admire atheists more than theists. Be an atheist if at the end of the day you are reasonably trying to evaluate if there is a good reason to believe in God, and if you come to the conclusion that there is not, that is the good reason to be an atheist. There are lots of bad reasons to be an athist. Don't be those. Be an atheist because there's not a good reason to be a theist.
Honestly, I didn't think of that. That's honestly a good point. I heard something that says kill your heroes metaphorically. So
I don't know.
It reminded me of that.
I know I'm some people's hero, and I just want to say kill your heroes non-metaphorically. All right, Katie. Have a good one.
Wait, not metaphorically, like literally.
Yeah, kill me. I'm just kidding. Don't really.
But
Don't.
no, thank you.
Living's
I
all I
appreciate
do.
it. I'll let y'all get to the other ones. And yeah, just thank you for all you do. And
Thanks, Katie.
take care.
Good luck, Katie.
Hello, I'm Jimmy Snow, Pokemon Master and Executive Producer on The Line. Would you like to support a specific show on The Line or The Line in general? There are special tiers on our Patreon and in our channel memberships. You can do just that. By the way, you could consider leaving a super thanks down below. You could also like, subscribe, and leave a regular comment. All of these are great. Now, I'm going to get back to crushing loneliness, but while I do that, why don't you check out one of these?